Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. We are here reviewing the latest Jordan Peele movie, which is Nope. Nope. But a very quick disclaimer from me, this is going to contain some spoilers for the movie, guys, so if you haven't seen it and you're going to see it, maybe come back to this video at a later time and let me know your thoughts on the movie in the comments. But let's just get straight to it. Let's cut to the chase. This is fantastic. This is another ball that's being smashed out of the park by Jordan Peele, written, produced and directed by the guy, and I just have to say he's got a knack for storytelling. This is a very long movie. It was over 2 hours long, and I think his other movies are exactly the same. They are sort of slow burning story building types of movies, very strange, very weird. They have their own sort of supernatural or eerie twists to them. And I am going to go through the story in this one, guys, so just bear with me. And like I said, this is going to contain huge spoilers if you haven't seen the movie yet. So come back to this one. So you've been warned enough about the spoiler, so let's get into it. So, to start off, we get a very creepy opening scene. A chimp has essentially murdered some people on a TV set, on a film set, in a studio somewhere. And instantly you're thinking, yeah. And it's got that true Jordan Peele flair to it. Already you're intrigued, already you want to know what the hell happened, and he tends to sort of go with that direction with all of his movies. That's kind of how he opens them. You're kind of left wondering what the hell happened, and throughout his movies what you tend to do, or what tends to happen in sort of like an equilibrium sort of timeline, experience the characters, you get to know the characters. There's a lot of time building up the scene, a lot of time building up the setting of the movie, a lot of time building up the tension, and that is completely evident here. This is another one of those films where if you're not sort of paying attention and you're not checking out what's going on, you're paying attention to what the characters are saying, you're paying attention to what's happening in the background in some of the scenes, you're going to miss some of the story here. But it's absolutely genius cinematography. It's genius storytelling. I was gripped to my seat the whole time, guys. This is about 2 hours and 15 minutes worth of movie. So it's a very long one, but it's where to begin, basically. So it starts off with a chimp murdering people. And it's literally what you see. He goes around just smashing people to pieces on this film set. Then you get the opening scene where we sort of cut to a ranch where the main character, Jordan Peele, is a rancher. He looks after horses. It starts off with Jordan Peele's character speaking to his dad. His dad's on a horse. They're in, and you're seeing this on the screen now, guys, by the way. This is one of the opening scenes. His dad sort of sits on the horse. They talk about the ranch. They talk about the future. They talk about where it's going. And the horses are basically used in movies, film sets, TV sets. So they're famous horses. They're bred to perfection. They're looked after and treated really well. They've got nice open spaces. And their ranch is used basically for the horses. People come and use them for film sets, and that's how they make their money. So they're talking about the future. Jordan Peele's character and his dad. And Jordan Peele's character is called OJ, and he's talking to his dad, and he says, you know, how are we going to progress forward with this? There's a bit of a rivalry going on with another ranch. And what actually happens is the dad, all of a sudden, everything just goes weird. All the electronics go off. All the phones die. And I think this is set in the 1980s or 90s. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, for those of you that have seen it. It's set around that time. So we've got technology. It's not the best, but we've got stuff. We've got stuff working. We've got cell phones, mobile phones. All that kind of stuff is working. We've got the internet. We've got cameras. And basically what happens in this opening scene is they start talking about the future, and all of a sudden all the electronics go off. There's a weird sort of wind warp, if you like. Real strange gust of wind. The weather starts to change slightly. And OJ kind of looks up and sees that stuff's starting to fall from the sky. Really oddly. There's like bits of debris falling down, key rings, shoes, pieces of buildings, furniture, all that kind of stuff starts like just trickling out of the sky, and he's like, what the fuck is going on? He kind of glances over to his dad. His dad sort of goes all limp and weird, and the horse just slowly leads him out of the pen, and the dad just falls off the horse face first on the floor, kaput, kissing the curb basically. And OJ sort of runs over to him, says what happened, what's going on. And he sees that he's got like pieces of debris lodged in him basically. What's happened is A piece of debris fell from the sky. It's lodged in his neck. He's then face planted the floor, and he's put himself into sort of like a mini coma / concussion, a real bad one. We then cut to him in the hospital, and the doctor's basically saying it's all over, and we basically see Jordan Peele's dad's character die. From that point, what they're told is that the cause of death was because of falling debris from an aeroplane. That old chestnut, Roswell, anyone? And that's going to tie into what I'm going to say and how this goes. You probably guessed from the trailer that this is about UFOs. It's about spaceships. It's about aliens, which is a bold move, I think, because not a lot of people that go in this direction do these types of movies very well. But as I said in the beginning, this is a fantastic movie, and I'll go into the reasons why. But they sell the story basically like there's a falling debris coming down from an airplane, and that's what's killed the dad's character. Not buying it. He kind of like sombers off, goes a little bit weird, and then we cut to the next scene where it's fast forward in time by a few months. He stood in one of the green rooms in a studio somewhere, and he's basically loaning one of the horses for a movie. This famous actress comes up and talks to him about the horse and says, "Oh, it's a lovely horse, da da da." And then this camera guy, who's part of the film crew, stands next to the horse and basically turns this glass orb. It freaks the horse out to no end, and the horse sort of kicks behind, and he says, "Don't do that, don't do this, don't do that," basically, and the horse freaks out. But it's not quite clear why. All the horse sees is his reflection, and hates it. Horse absolutely goes crazy, kicks off, and everything else. So we fast forward. Same scene, we're still in the studio, and Jordan Peele's sister's character, who's played by Kiki, comes in, and basically she's a bubbly character. She's out there, she's very outspoken. She comes in and says, "Hey, we're Haywood horses, this is what we do. Did you know the first picture of a person on a horse was a black dude, and he was my great grandfather." And everyone's like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah." So she's basically trying to sell the name, trying to oomph it a little bit, whereas Jordan Peele's character OJ is very, very flat. He's not interested in anyone there. He doesn't want to make conversation. He's quite down to earth, pun intended, and it works later on. His character works brilliantly later on, where he's so sort of centered in himself. He's not interested in this weird and wacky lifestyle. He's not outspoken. He's not a party goer. He just wants to have the quiet life. He just wants to be at home with his horses. He's got no friends. He's got no family. He's got no girlfriend. His dad's died. His sister's there now to try and pick him up a little bit, and just to try and see things through. But all in all, he's not interested. He doesn't want a good time. He's just quite a leave it to me character. Anyway, the sister comes in. She starts basically going out there to trying to pitch the company, and it works. The guys are like absolutely buying it, lapping it up. So then it's agreed that the horse will be used for the movie. Then we sort of get this really long sequence. It's probably about an hour, where we really focus in on the main characters, and I'm not against that, because the way that Jordan Peele does it is fantastic. You really get a sense of what each character's like. You get a sense of what their interests are, and not just on a boring sort of vanilla tick box level. You understand what their fears are. You understand why they're there. You understand their own personal goals and interests, but you also feel that there's a strong family connection. Despite everything that's going on, there's a strong family connection between Jordan's character and Kiki's character as brother and sister, and they've got that bond. You feel that. You really get the sense that they're there to support each other. They want the ranch to do well. And we then go into, once we've done all that, and we get used to their characters, we get used to what's going on, weird stuff really then starts picking up. After the first hour of the movie, stuff starts getting crazy. So in essence, the horses consistently freak out. There's loads of different horses that they've got on the ranch. They all bolt, they all make screaming noises, they all run, and then shortly after that you get this weird sort of sound drop where there's no sound, there's no ambience, there's no wind. All the electronics go off, all the lighting, all the phones, all the TV, the music, everything just dies. And then what happens, or what we see at this time happening, is this really harrowing sort of screeching, screaming noise. And it sounds like a vacuum. You don't see anything, and they're just trying to work out what the hell's going on. Jordan Peele's character then spots something. The horse bolts towards the mountains, and then he spots something come up from the ground and shoot off into the sky. It's sort of like a shadow orb, elongated sort of shape. But we don't see any details, we don't see any lights. We don't hear anything, so he's very freaked out. He's like, oh, this is new. What I really like about his character is, even when he sees something like that, he's not completely shocked. He's just looking at it and he just sort of goes, that's pretty weird, never seen that before. And that's where the humor comes in this movie. Kiki's character is quite funny, she has some good dialogue, but Jordan Peele's character is absolutely brilliant. He plays it amazingly well. Just this very sort of laid back, casual, I'm just a ranch guy, you know, I just don't want any of this business. And the way when he first saw the UFO, I was almost in stitches laughing, where he just sort of just, you know, it is what it is, you know, that's a bit weird, never seen that before. Whereas anyone else would be screaming, running, getting their phones out, and he's not about that at all. And it works really well later on. What happens then, he sort of goes into Kiki, sort of says to her, I saw something, I think this is what it is. And she sort of says, do you know what you're saying, right? You're saying you saw a UFO, you understand what you're telling me now. So she's not really on board with it. She thinks that it's to do with the depression, the anxiety and the bereavement of his dad recently passing away, or their dad recently passing, and he's not quite over it yet. Kiki hasn't got that same connection. She's part of the family group, she's part of the business, but she's got her own thing going on. That's not her main hustle, and she's only there really to support her brother and to support the company, because she knows that the business is now going to go downhill. Even the movie producer that Jordan Peele's character was talking to when he was introducing the horse in the studio bit I was talking about, even the director says, where's the dad? You know, what happened to him? We didn't sign up to this guy. He's boring, he's bland, does he even know what he's doing? And one of the sort of film crew says to him, well, this is what happened. He got killed by falling debris, and now we have to deal with the son. And he's like, oh, great. So they can't turn him away, but they're not interested either. They're just kind of putting up with him because he's plan B and they need a horse for the movie. So, and apparently they're the best horses around. So it's all about this ranch. It's all about the horses. It's all about the family name, the Haywoods. And yeah, so Jordan Peele's character sees this UFO. He talks to Kiki. She's not really buying it. Then we fast forward to a few nights after. It gets weirder, more intense. He now actually sees an outline of what appears to be a spacecraft, a UFO type ship. It's got a very weird sort of oblong shape, and at the end it's flat. But he very, very clearly sees it go off into the clouds. So he absolutely knows what he saw is legit. He kind of buys his sister into it. She believes him. She also has her own weird experience where she's in the house, sort of dancing to some loud music, and everything sort of cuts out. Everything just drops. The music goes off. The lights goes off. She stood there in the dark. She shouts out to OJ and says, what the hell's going on? And he sort of says, you know, this is what I was telling you about. She sort of sees something as well as it goes off. She notices the ship. So she's completely on board at this point. And what they both decide to do is try and find a UFO expert, or try and reach out to someone that's going to help them sort of document this and just prove that they exist. At this point, we don't know what the spacecraft is or what its agenda is. What really cleverly happens, and it's a huge twist, and it took me by surprise. They go to essentially a retail sort of electronics store. They buy loads of cameras. They speak to this guy who's an absolute nerd on UFOs, loves it. And he just sort of says, is there anything, you know, did you find everything you needed today? Thank you for your purchase. He sort of hates his job, hates his life, but in the background, he's a massive on-board nerd with UFOs and all things aliens. Completely relates to it, completely understands it. And he notices what they're buying. He sort of says to them, either you're setting up like a security firm, or you believe in aliens, or you've witnessed aliens. And they're like, oh, ha, ha, ha. And then actually, the sister sort of looks at Jordan's character and says, we could use this guy. So what they do, they purchase all the electronic equipment. They purchase like some security cameras, some lighting triggers, all that kind of stuff to put around the ranch and on the roof, so they can actually get evidence of this thing being in the area, basically being alive, and to take it to the government and all that kind of stuff. So what they do is order it. The guy that they bought it from at the till, so the UFO nerd, comes to install all the equipment, sets everything up. He's all over it. He's like, yeah, you know, I can see this being a UFO hotspot. A lot of people have said in the past that it is. OJ, Jordan Peele's character, basically is obsessed with Oprah. He says, you're only legit and your evidence is only legit if you can make it to Oprah. So we need to get evidence that Oprah will accept and will go on the show and talk to her about it. So that's his benchmark. He's only happy, and he feels that people are only going to believe him if he's got enough evidence to be able to go on to Oprah. So that's kind of like a running joke throughout the movie as well. His sister then sort of says to him, just take a photo of it, just do something, you don't need to be on Oprah, and then the UFO expert guy, as he's installing the cameras, basically says, he's right. There's lots of videos, there's lots of photos out there of different things that people have experienced, but in all honesty, the only way you're really gonna get credibility for what's out there and find out what's out there and get government interest enough to find out exactly what it is by publicizing it in a very, very accurate way. So none of this blurry imaging, none of this old school film. It needs to be legit, basically. So he goes away. He says, do you know what? He's absolutely itching to stay there and help them. He says, do you need my help? I could be a good cameraman. I could do this. I could do that. And they're just kind of like, nah, it's okay. We've got this. So he disappears. He goes back to the electronics store. This is where stuff gets really, really crazy. So as the film goes on, you see more and more of this object. You see more and more of what it's capable of and what it's actually doing to things. And at this point, what we discover is the object is not a spacecraft. It's not a UFO. It's not a ship. It's a living thing that eats stuff. And at this point, I was like, what the hell? It's essentially a UFO with teeth. But you don't see teeth or anything like that. I'll go into the detail of what it actually is. There's one character in here who is part of what we call an opposing ranch. And he was part of this TV show where this chimp, which I think was called Gobo or something like that, or Gobi, was the main attraction. Kind of like remember the Hendersons? It's like that sort of thing where they used an actual real chimp. They dressed him up in clothes. He had jumpers on. They did like different episodes where they took him to the beach, things like that. And it was a comedy show within the movie. And what happened is, all of a sudden, one day the chimp just snapped, killed people on set, went on a murdering spree, but he didn't kill this kid. And the reason why he didn't kill the kid, and you don't find out until the end, is what's happening with this spacecraft is linked to what happened at the beginning of the film. What it does is it goes around and it eats people. It spits out debris, it spits out the usual wood, plaster, roof, furniture, anything that's not containing vital nutrients, basically, not tasty, is sort of spat back out. And that's what the fallen debris is. It's not coming from an aeroplane, it's coming from this thing that's eating people. And essentially what it does, it swoops in like a spaceship. It looks just like a spaceship, and a tiny little hole opens at the bottom, and it sort of works like a vacuum. You see all the dust tornadoes sort of going up into what they think is a spacecraft. But what's interesting is it doesn't touch the horses. It doesn't eat animals. It tends to just go for people. And they can't work out why that is. So they know there's a trick to the horses. There's a trick to learning why it won't go for horses, but it will go for people. But anyway, tying back into the chimpanzee story, there's a guy that's at an opposing ranch who is trying to make profit from it. And we find out later on in the film that the guy that's running the opposing ranch is also the young child that the chimp spared at the beginning of the film. He was hiding under the table. The chimp sort of glanced at him, and then it cuts away, and you don't know if the chimp killed him or not, but you later find out he didn't. And then you're sort of wondering, well, why didn't the chimp kill him? It went around and murdered everybody else. Why did it spare the kid? And essentially it snapped back out of whatever crazed state it was in. And what triggered it was the weird spacecraft type thing. As it flies over, we now know when all the electronics go off and there's a sound drop and you get this weird screeching and vacuuming sound, we know that the spacecraft or thing is above wherever people are. And what happens in the opening scene is actually the electromagnetic field takes out the helium balloons. It makes the balloons pop and snap really, really loud, and it sends the chimp into a frenzy. It reminds the chimp of the days when it was in the jungle and it used to be hunted. So it's used to gunshots, it's used to loud banging noises, and it hates it. So it kind of ties into the horses as well. Jordan Peele constantly throughout the film says to people, don't stand behind the horse, don't make any sudden loud noises. This is the reason why it's come from the wild, and this is what happens. And it ties into the similar behaviors of the chimp. So that's why the chimp goes crazy. The electromagnetic field from this thing, what we think is the spaceship, wipes out the balloons within the studio. All of them bang and pop, and the chimp thinks there's gunshots going off. So it goes around murdering people, defending itself essentially. And then what you see at this point in the movie is the chimp sort of calms down. It's really heavy breathing. It sits there. It's drenched in blood. There's some really horrific scenes where the chimp is absolutely smashing people in the face with its bare fist. You can hear the crunching, the squelching and everything. It basically goes on a killing spree. It kills all the cast, as I said, bar the young kid hidden under the desk. And I think it's taken out some of the people in the audience as well, although most of them escape and the film crew just drop and run. They're out of there. So they just leave this poor kid stashed under the table. But what we actually realize then is the kid is the ranch owner, the opposite ranch owner. So he's gone a little bit rogue. He's gone a little bit naughty at this point. He's trying to profit from what he knows is an extraterrestrial force, because he experienced it when he was in the studio, and that's what drove the chimp to being crazy. He knows where it is. He knows it's a certain spot in the sky, the same place, the same cloud. And what's really creepy as well is that you actually find that out in that this spacecraft or thing has been hidden within a cloud the whole movie. It's the same cloud, it doesn't move, and it only comes out to feed. And that's creepy as hell, but that's why Jordan Peele is so good at writing movies like this. Absolute master of horror, I think, now. But anyway, going back to the point I was getting at, the animals freak out and they escape, but they sort of defend themselves, and the thing doesn't like that. It doesn't eat animals. It doesn't, unless they're in the crossfire. It tends to go for humans. It tends to go for people. And you later find out why. And the reason why it goes for people is because they look at it, which sounds very simple and strange. But the weird little quirk to this thing is that it only comes for you if you look at it. So if you look naturally, as people, we see something weird in the sky, we're going to look up at it. That's when it zones in on you and it comes for you. If you don't look up at it, you're safe. It's going to fly past you. It's not going to know you're there. So there's this weird sort of eye connection sort of thing that triggers this spacecraft / living alien thing. So at this point, we fast forward in time. There's loads of different weird, wonderful stuff that happens. I won't ruin it too much. I know I've gone into quite a bit of spoilers, but there's some really, really cool scenes in this movie. Really scary, jumpy scenes. One of my favorites is where Jordan Peele's character goes into the barn, because he hears one of the horses freaking out, and what he thinks he sees is small alien beings, right? There's 3 of them, and one of them is sort of, it's really creepy how he does it. There's tension and music. There's violin sort of really high strung violin noise playing, and this weird sort of clicking, cracking noise. It's hard to explain, but the music, cinematography, and the way that this scene is shot is absolutely perfect. And I was like, this is creepy. So what happens is he goes in, he calms the horse down, all the lights are doing the weirdness again. And what actually happens is he turns around and he sees like this outline of this shadow that's against the wall. It comes away from the wall and starts bending, twisting, and doing some weird stuff. You can't make out exactly what it is, but it looks completely alien. 100% alien. There's no features, it's just a shadow, like an outline. And then a second one steps away from the wall. So then there's 2. He freaks out a little bit and runs around the corner. He gets out his camera. He's pointing the camera at like the corner of the post where the horse is in the ranch. And slowly, ever so slowly, you just see a top of a head, and then sort of a face comes out from the side of the bars. And it's a grey, basically. It's what we know as what a grey, what people say a grey looks like. Big sort of black almond eyes, bald head, really, really small nose, very little sort of facial features, but a really big domed head. And then I'm thinking, oh shit, here we go. He's actually putting aliens in this as well. What's hilarious is he runs away from the 2, and then the third one drops down next to him off the ceiling, like lowers itself down, and he turns and gives it a good Mike Tyson right hook to the jaw, knocks it off the ceiling. And what it actually turns out to be is 3 kids from the opposing ranch playing tricks on him, basically, because they feel he stole their horse, because there was a trade going on and basically ended up with one of their horses. They claim that he stole it. He's basically profiting from the horse being in the movie and stuff like that, which they're not happy with. So they thought it'd be funny to go in dressed as aliens and play a prank on him. He wasn't a fan of that. They run off. His sister sort of comes in and says, what's going on? And he explains the situation and says, oh, it was the kids from the other ranch. She says, I'm going to have them. That's it. This is all on now. And he's like, no, don't worry, just leave it. We then sort of fast forward in time. Lots of weird stuff happens. The electronics guy comes back. They let him stay. He's all over this alien stuff. He's absolutely interested in it. And what he's actually doing as well is he goes back to the electronics store. He doesn't do his job at all. He's sat there in the dark late at night with someone that's on the night shift, and he's looking at the feed from the cameras, which is illegal. He's not supposed to be doing it, but he's got such a vested interest in these people, in this story, and aliens and UFOs in general, that he's looking at the feed and he starts to see some of the weird stuff that they experience, which prompts him to go back to the ranch, and he says, look, I saw what you guys saw. I can't believe it. I want to see more. I'm here to help, basically. They kind of call him out on it and say, you shouldn't have done that. It's illegal, you pervert. But he's kind of like, it is what it is. You know, I'm here. So anyway, they let him in. He's then part of their little group, and he uses his expertise with the cameras and stuff to help them find a means of getting proof of this. What they then do, and what he recommends, is they reach out to a UFO expert, a guy that's into the paranormal, into the sort of proof of things, and he's a massive sort of film buff, movie buff, and he's got his own sort of cameras, high-tech equipment, and he just spends his days just sort of staring at footage of stuff, that weird and wonderful stuff that he's shot in the past. But he said to the world, to the public, that he's always after that impossible shot, that one thing that everyone says doesn't exist. He wants to get that one shot. So they reach out to him, and in the beginning he's not interested. He thinks they're pulling his leg. He thinks it's easily explained through weather patterns and stuff like that, the usual UFO stuff that you guys have heard, seen and read. He sort of denies it and says, you know, there's a logical reason why things happen, and there's obviously this, that and the other. They don't have enough evidence at this point on camera or in pictures to prove to him what's happening is happening. In between all that, Jordan Peele's character OJ says, I'm going back to get Lucky, which is one of the horses that got away. The opposing ranch stole the horse, which they claim is theirs, but anyway, they steal the horse. So they use the horse as part of a show. The leader of this ranch, or the head of the ranch, the guy that owns it, is the kid from the original scene. So the kid that was hiding under the table with the chimp has a history. He's now a ranch owner, and he's making a show out of basically what he knows exists. So the spacecraft, the aliens, whatever it is. And he knows if the horses are there in the box, he won't be touched. He thinks the horse is the way to not being eaten or killed, but we know that's not the case. They won't touch the animals, they won't touch the horses, they tend to leave them alone most of the time. But what actually triggers the craft or alien creature to eat people is the eye contact, and this guy doesn't know that. So he's got this horse in a box. I say a box, it's like a glass dome with a sort of cover over it. Him and his wife are sort of making loads of grand gestures in this sort of half horseshoe stadium where there's loads of people watching. He sort of says, you know, you're here to see a great show, this is what you came to see, blah blah blah, look how great my horse is. But then he sort of goes into the real reason why he set up the ranch, and he sort of says, do you know that time when you think something's there but you just can't prove it? Well guys, I'm going to prove to you that aliens exist. They live up there, they're behind that cloud. And everyone's like, what the hell is this guy on? We didn't come up to see this. So what then happens is he takes the blanket off of the horse, the cover, and the craft sort of comes out from the cloud, and everyone's like, what the hell, like absolutely shitting it, as you would. And he's never seen it come out from the clouds. He knows it's there because of what happened with the chimp, as I said, but he's never seen anything. He just knows that there was something there that day that caused it to happen, and it was in that area, it was in that sort of space. And he says when people go to visit his sort of little office area, he's got memorabilia from what happened that day. So there was one particular scene where a shoe was stood up on end on its own, just hovering there because of the electromagnetic pull. He's kept that in the glass frame, and it's sat in exactly the same position. There's certain things that he's kept, certain things that he knows is sort of legit memorabilia, really. So he sort of says to these people, this is what happened there, I know there's aliens, I know it's this, I know it's that. And then we fast forward to the current day, where he's saying, look, and then all of a sudden this craft comes out of the cloud. He absolutely bricks it, and he thinks, oh shit, everything I know I've been thinking. So it's almost like one of those self-realization moments where you believe in something, but you're still absolutely gobsmacked and blown away when you see it in person. It's still, you know, there's still no words for it, even though it's sort of like the human aspect taking over, saying, shit, you know, you've been thinking about this all the time, there it actually is, this is crazy. So the next scene is the poor guy gets sucked up. The whole crowd gets sucked up. Everyone dies, basically. This craft comes down, vacuums everybody up, and you just see this vortex of dust, and it just pulls people up, and they just get eaten. You do get this really weird and interesting scene where you actually see people go into the inside, and this is the part where you actually discover that it's not a spaceship. You see sort of the inside of what looks like the lining of a stomach. You get sort of these blood-filled sacks that go up the left and right-hand side. People are just slowly going up through this sack, and then it gets to the very top, and it looks like there's two sort of, well, it looks like suction cups at the very top of the stomach. It's very hard to explain, but you guys will understand it when you see it. And this essentially is the top of the stomach, so the people get pushed right to the top, and then there's these little suctions who just absorb the body, basically break it down into the, what I assume is a bloodstream or equivalent to a bloodstream, and breaks it down into food. Yum yum. This is the point where we realize that what we think has been a spaceship the whole movie is not a spaceship. It's a living, breathing alien creature who goes around chomping on people, and it's freaky. What then happens is they get the movie buff on board. You get the UFO guy on board. He's totally into it. He turns up at the ranch and he says, look, I'm here to help you. I'm here to do this. Let's get this thing on camera. So they do. I'm just going to switch over to the poster now, guys. So you've got that there. Which they do. And what's really, really clever is, I've missed quite a bit of the movie, but that's the gist of it. And what happens next is they sort of set up cameras all the way along the ranch. The UFO buff guy brings his own handheld camera, which is not electronic, has to be powered by hand, which is going to ensure that they get a good picture of it, basically. But also what happens is, through the middle of the movie, the weird alien thing sucks up a statue of a horse, which is the main horse statue of the ranch, and it's got loads of flags attached to it, like those sort of bunting flags. It sucks it up, and then, which is what you can see here in the poster on the screen, guys. You've got the spaceship, or what appears to be the spaceship, with the flags hanging out the bottom. And what Jordan Peele's character discovers is it can't digest fabric, it can't digest flags, it can't digest any of the stuff like the cloth that it's absorbed, which is why it goes for buildings and people. It can't digest it, it's too dense, I would assume, or it can't digest cotton for some reason. He comes up with an idea to set up a trap, basically. So what they do is they bring in loads of air dancers, they place them all around the ranch, and what this will do, because they're battery powered, it will tell them exactly where the electromagnetic field is. So when the field turns up, the air dancer will drop. Very clever idea. And what the plan is to get the alien creature to eat lots and lots of flags and lots of fabric, which sounds crazy. But what they're looking to do is jam its intestines, jam its internal digestive system to basically suffocate it and kill it. All the while getting a photo of it and making sure that it goes public on Oprah. So they set up a trap, and just as they're about to spring the trap on this thing, a guy on a motorbike turns up from TMZ and he says, you know, what do you think loads of people disappeared out of nowhere on that ranch over the hill, and what have you got to say about it? And she's like, shit, do you have to do this now? The guy doesn't listen, naturally. Bombs it down into the valley on his motorbike. They're all sort of waiting there, ready in position for this thing to come out of the clouds. And the tech guy sort of says, what do you get when you get an electromagnetic field crossing a bike that's going in the opposite direction? Because the bike's electric. And we all know what's coming, but still. The guy just bombs it down the middle of the alley, and all of a sudden he just comes flying off the bike. Obviously the electromagnetic field has cut out the power to the bike, and he just goes flying. Absolutely hilarious. One of those comedy moments in the film, quite rare, but beautifully written and really, really funny. And I was in stitches laughing at it, so I thought, have that, you asshole. But he sort of collapsed. What we assume is dead. The electronics guy's like, nobody's going to survive that. He's definitely dead. But you hear him scream, so he's still alive. Obviously in pain, broken a few bones, and Jordan Peele's character OJ just sort of trots towards him on the horse. He then realizes at this point, he has sort of like a flashback to the film studio, where the cameraman, as I said earlier, stood in front of the horse, and he tilted this glass orb, and the horse saw its own reflection, and that's what freaked it out. So then it clicks in his head. The only reason this thing is eating people is because people look at it. If you don't look at it, it's not going to come for you. And he sort of associates that because he has a conversation with the UFO paranormal guy about what he thinks it is. And the paranormal guy says, I don't think it's a spaceship, I think it's a living thing. It's been hidden in that cloud. There's no energy out there that can sustain itself for that long. It's a living thing. It's hiding in the clouds. And what happens is when it's ready to feed, it comes out and it feeds. Interestingly, when they have that conversation, that's when Jordan Peele's character realizes that the only reason this thing is eating people is because people are looking straight at it. So if you don't look at it, if you look at the floor, it won't eat you, it will go away. So that's essentially what he does. He goes down to the guy that's fell off the bike, the TMZ journalist, and he picks him up and says, look at me, don't look at that, don't look above me, look straight at me. Of course he looks above him and he gets vacuumed up. What's really clever at this point, there's flags attached to Jordan Peele's character. He's got them on a backpack. What he then does is he looks at it just as that thing's at the guy, which is kind of used as bait, which is quite twisted, but it works quite well. The guy gets eaten. He unloads the flags from his backpack, and there's a nice trail of flag bunting that's going all the way behind the horse, basically. He looks up at it, he knows it's going to come for him. He starts going full pelt on the horse, and what actually happens is he sucks up all the flags, he jumps off the horse escapes, don't worry. He cuts the flags loose, and then it absorbs so many of the flags, which is what you see in the poster there. It flies off, and it's got half the bunting stuck in its stomach, half of it being dragged along. What happens next is a little bit odd, but the UFO guy has a little bit of an epiphany. He sort of goes a bit crazy, runs out of the camp, stands on the top of the hill, starts doing his camera like this. The thing sees him, comes down, sucks him up, but he thinks he's going to get the absolute impossible shot, which he does, but obviously he's dead. So he gets sucked up into the thing, I assume with his camera as well, so although he did take the most impossible shot, no one's ever going to see it. Idiot. But he kind of sacrifices himself to get that impossible shot, which is a little bit weird, and I didn't quite get why he did it, but in the grand sense of what his personal interest in it was, he fulfilled what he needed to do. So he witnessed it with his own eyes, and he got it on the camera, and that's what he was saying from the off that he wanted to do, and he did get it done. So I suppose he fulfilled his purpose as that character arc as well. So he dies. There's lots of madness going on. Then the sister panics, looks at it. The tech guy panics, looks at it. And then it sort of in turn goes for both of them. They both sort of cleverly manage to escape. One of them, very luckily, the tech guy gets covered in a tarpaulin, sort of blows in his face, which causes him to not look at it, covers his eyes, he falls to the floor, and the thing sucks him up so far and then drops him basically, because it doesn't realise the eye contact is no longer there. It just drops him because it assumes it's picked up something dead or not useful. And that's kind of how this alien thing works. It works in the sense that it makes eye contact with a living thing. It knows that thing can be eaten. It's full of meats, full of juices, all that stuff, vitamins. And I think that's the reason why the animals don't get eaten, is because the horses have wide vision, they have peripheral vision, and their eyes are at the side of their head. They can't look up. So I assume that's why the horses can't be eaten. So it's very clever if that's the case. And likewise with the chimpanzee, because the chimp was inside the building and there was a roof and we just heard the noises, and it was actually the magnetic field that caused the chimp to freak out by the balloons popping, and it just sort of in its head, it was back in the jungle, was attempted to be poached, and it just defended itself basically. It just went crazy. But that is why you don't have chimps as pets, guys. So chimps can rip your arm off, they will eat your feet, they will murder your children. I'm not joking. So don't have chimps as pets. But fast forwarding back to this. So here we are at the end of the movie basically. There's a showdown between this thing, the sister, and OJ. The electronics guy's kind of in the background. He doesn't die, I believe, but he's sort of injured off the menu. And what happens is pretty cool. So the sister gets on the electric bike. She tries to get away, but obviously the magnetic field's still there because it's too close to the bike. He sort of taunts it. He looks up at it, draws the thing towards him, gives the sister enough time to start the bike and drive off. But what she's actually doing, and what they do, is they look at each other. He sort of goes like that and just basically says to her, I'll draw it away from you, then you go over there, do what you need to do to get rid of it. So he pulls the spacecraft towards him. At this point, this thing just turns into a Pokemon. It evolves. It goes from this sort of discus saucer type shape, which is why we've always assumed it was a spacecraft, and it morphs into what I can only describe as an envoy from Elden Ring, if you know what an envoy looks like. If you don't, look it up. And some sort of jellyfish. It breaks off into different parts. There's it looks like a hot air balloon that's got loads of holes in it, basically. It's really hard and weird to explain. And what happens then, it sort of fans itself out and moves towards the two characters very slowly. It opens up what I assume is like a mouth piece, and this weird purple square sort of opens, and it sort of keeps I'm trying to explain it the best I can, guys. It was like a square mouthpiece, a purple sort of tentacles at the front of it, and it opens, another square comes forward, and it opens, another square comes forward, and I assume that's the actual real mouthpiece of this thing. But it essentially turns into a space jellyfish. It comes at them and they work together to lure it away. So the sister lures it all the way to the opposing ranch. She spots this massive thumbs up cowboy inflatable balloon, and it is huge. It's literally like a hot air balloon. It's tied to the middle of the ranch by wires. So she goes in, undoes all the wires, lets this thing off into the sky, attaches loads of flags to it, loads of cotton, and basically puts all the bunting that was around the ranch onto the wires. So as it goes up, it's got all these flags trailing off of it as well. And what she does is uses there's like a well machine. It's got a crank on it. You put some coins in and it takes a photo above. The idea is that you look into the well, you turn the crank, and it takes a photo of your face looking down into the well, which is obviously an old Western wishing well type of prop. So that's what she uses essentially to take a photo of this thing. She tries to get the balloon to go straight up and lure it. She knows if it eats it, it's going to get jammed in its intestines and it's over. But she can also get a photo of it by cranking this machine, which takes the flash pictures. So she times it perfectly. She gets the thing to eat it, and the way that she gets it to eat it is it's doing that. It's got eyes, it's looking at it, and the thing can't tell that it's not a living thing because it's got an eye and it's looking at it. It assumes it's a living thing, so it goes for it, absorbs it. You see it eat it, and it literally eats it like a jellyfish does, or a squid, or an octopus. It sort of brings the tentacles around and then sucks it up into the mouth. And she just in time cranks the wheel, and it takes a picture of it, and you get a perfect printout of this space creature eating the cowboy, the hot air cowboy. And almost instantly the thing blows up. You get the next shot is you see the intestines get sort of clouded with fog and smog. You can hear it sort of squelching, screaming, and all of a sudden it just bursts into a million pieces. You see like the skin particles floating down. You see like the bits of debris that it hasn't quite digested yet floating down. And it's just destroyed. It's absolutely destroyed. The really next cool scene is the sister's like, have that, you fucker, nobody messes with Haywood, which is what I thought was absolutely hilarious. It's one of my favourite sort of lines in the movie. She sort of gives it the West Side Story. Nobody fucks with us sort of thing. And I thought it was really cool. And the final scene is OJ's character stood in the archway of the ranch. All the dust is sort of blown in his face, and he sort of stood there like sideways on the horse, which links back into the very first picture of the very first cowboy, which was a black guy on a horse, which was her and his great-great-grandfather. So it sort of ties in nicely with the bond of the family, that it's a home-built family ranch, and they've all got each other's backs, and they're all hard asses, basically. It was just a nice tie-in to that story, and it was a nice tie-in to the bond that they had working with each other through the movie. They didn't get on at first, and it sort of ends with that. This is why we're here. That original picture of our great-great-grandfather, this is us. You know, we're sort of cowboys rising from the dust, cowboys coming out of the smoke, and I thought it was really cool. So that's it. That's how the film basically ends. It all goes to the final sort of scene is that, and you just see some people running into the ranch, so sort of government figures, normal people, journalists, and you then see a printout of what came out from the well machine, which is a perfect shot of the creature eating the balloon. So you then know and assume that that's the point where people understand that it's a living, breathing thing, that it's alive. There's probably more of them out there, and it's going to spark government interest. So that's where the film ends. So everybody gets what they want. The Jordan Peele character OJ gets his sense of belonging. He gets his sense of being, because for the whole movie he hates people. He doesn't want to talk to anyone. He's very isolated, very much a recluse. And then by the end of the movie, he becomes that cowboy on that horse, that one person rising from the smoke. And in all honesty, if it wasn't for him, most of them would be dead, if not all of them. And they wouldn't have taken that thing down. It's because of him that he clocked the eye contact thing is what it goes for. So he's the hero of the movie. And the sister goes for a really good character arc as well. She's very boisterous, very out there. Still is by the end, but she sort of pays homage to the family. She pays homage to her brother, and how important it is to get that information out into the public. So then they say, this is good enough for Oprah, and that's kind of how it finishes. They get what they need, they get the evidence. So it all comes to a very nice conclusion / ending. So that's the movie, guys. I have missed quite a lot out in terms of scenes during the movie. Some of them are very creepy, very sort of freak me out quite a bit. There's quite a few jump scares in here. It's not an intense horror, but there's some real serious jumps in here. It does remind me quite a lot of the movie Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. I think it's got that sort of vibe to it, but it's a little bit more intense. It's a little bit more nasty in terms of the bloody scenes, in terms of the gore and stuff that you see. Especially when there's this one bit where the whole thing is hovering over their main house. It sucks up people that are dotted around the outside, some of the debris, and what you can actually hear is the screams of the people being digested, and then it just sprays an absolute ton of blood over the house. So then when they come out the next morning, the house is just absolutely plastered in blood. And then that's when the UFO guy turns up and says, you do realize you got a wheelchair on your roof and that doesn't look right. And they're like, yeah, this is what we've been trying to tell you. So that's what basically gauges his interest and makes him believe in what they're saying. But all in all, guys, it's a fantastic movie. It's another smash hit by Jordan Peele. As I said, he's written, directed and produced this film, and it is absolutely fantastic. You can see his work at play here massively. The cinematography is excellent. The characters were well casted. They all made sense. They all had their own purpose. The voice dialogue and the acting itself was brilliant, very believable. The scenes were shot perfectly. There's really good sort of panning scenes and sort of cinematography, wide angle shots as well, which really draw you into the sort of the scene itself, the setting and what story they're trying to tell within that particular scene. Absolutely loved it. The creature itself is disgustingly amazing. The design on it is perfect. I don't know if he had much involvement in the design of that creature. Whoever designed it is a legend, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got influences from films like Signs, even First Contact. There's loads of sort of UFO alien movies out there, Independence Day, and I think it sort of blends the best bits of those movies together to make it its own original masterpiece. And the fact that it was hidden in the cloud the whole time makes it even creepier. It's like one of those times when you play a game like Bloodborne and you find out the amygdala has been on the side of the cathedral the whole damn time, and the only reason you haven't seen it is because you didn't have enough insight. It's like that. So it's kind of like, oh my god, that cloud hasn't moved. That has been there the whole film. They're right. And it's creepy, really creepy. But it's a horror film. That's what it's there to do. It's there to question your sense of normality. It's there to put you on edge a little bit. It's there to make you jump, and this film does that fantastically. I highly recommend you go and see this, guys, if you haven't already, and if you haven't seen any of the other Jordan Peele movies either, such as Us, go and have a look and check them out. They're all really, really good. And I think this one for me, because I'm into sci-fi, I'm into the paranormal, I'm into weird and wonderful stuff, this is my favourite so far out of all the movies he's done, because the ones he's done before, whilst they're absolutely fantastic, they've all been around sort of thriller elements, what I call thriller elements, which is human protagonists. So nasty people, nasty characters, serial killers, people that are just deranged, deluded, and have mental health issues, basically, severe mental health issues, are those types of pivotal characters in these previous movies. But this one, it's alien, it's UFO, it's paranormal, it's out there, it's sci-fi. And I think it's a bold move. I think it's a really, really bold move to pitch this as a horror film. But it is absolutely a horror film. And it's easy to see why this guy has won Academy Awards, why he's been nominated for Emmys and stuff like that, because he knows what he's doing. He's mastered this type of work, and I can't wait to see what else he's going to do. So for me, guys, it's a solid 10 out of 10 movie. Highly recommend you go and watch it. It's not one for kids. This is a 15, just to put out there. There is some quite gruesome scenes, so I don't recommend any younger eyes watch this, because they will be sucked up by the vacuum. I had to get that in there. But no, seriously, don't let your kids watch this. There's some really gruesome scenes in it, but it's great for us horror fans. It's great for sci-fi fans. It's great for alien enthusiasts, UFO enthusiasts. And if you just like Jordan Peele movies, or even if you haven't seen any of his movies before, if you just want a solid, that's interesting experience, that sort of movie. It is fairly long, so give the first half an hour a chance to set in, because for those of you that are quite impatient, you may find it a bit boring in that first half. But for me, it really embeds the tone of the story, the overarching themes as well about the chimpanzee, the horses, what this thing is, the character arcs. It gives enough time to settle into what's really going on with these people, what's really going on in each of their minds, what this thing is, what they're experiencing, and we don't want it rushed. And Jordan Peele is, I think, a master at timing. He is very good at not rushing movies. He's very good at setting a very good pace. And it's not until you get to sort of the second half or towards the end of the movies that you find out why that first bit took so long. There's reasons for everything in this, guys. I don't think there's any dislodged logic or anything or any madness going on. I think everything has its place in this movie and it's perfect. Really, really enjoyed it. As I said, highly recommend you go and watch it. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you've watched it, what your thoughts on the movie are. Please do leave a thumbs up as well if you did enjoy this, and don't forget to come subscribe if you want to see more movie reviews and further content. Until next time, take care of yourselves, don't look at it, and I'll see you again very soon. Peace.